just because you're good at something doesn't mean you can run a business in it, because that's like, it's only like 20% implementation, or like the dentist doing dentistry is like 20%, and then there's this finance,
there's all
team,
the things,
and it's just like, oh my god, you need to be both, or partner up with someone who's both. I think,
you know, it's really fascinating, because since I absolutely agree with you, it is something of a absolute wake up call to think that you can do business, you know, when you have never done it before or never studied it before. You know, my husband, what's fascinating about my husband is that he went to university to become a chartered accountant, and that gives you the full grounds to actually an understanding of business and running a business and how to do all of that, which is extremely different, you know, to when you actually study naturopathy, where, you know, you're basically studying naturopathy, you are not actually being taught, like if you do a course that's like 4 hours on business, that was pretty much my business experience.
Well, even then, like every second person I seem to meet nowadays is doing a business degree.
Yeah.
It's a classic, I'm not sure what I want to do. Business is overarching, which sure makes sense. But I always ask them, because I have my own business. I've been with Dent. So like since I've finished high school, all I've seen is business owners.
Yes.
And I'm like, what do you learn? And they're like, oh, we learn, you know, a bit of finance and stuff. But they're like, we don't really learn how to run a business. And I'm like,
the practical aspect
what is
of
business?
it. Exactly.
I'm like, because it's like, do you learn about partnerships? You learn about how to grow, how to manage team, how to you know, do accounting, or how to learn your finances. And like, nah. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
So how do you learn? There aren't really any official ways. There's programs like what we've seen, but they're all independent. They're not government run, or they're not like official.
Yes.
You know,
and it's self-learning. You have to actually decide
100%.
that you're going to. And this is really something that's so important, I think, for people in general. You know, if you are not someone who is willing to be, one, resourceful, to do whatever it has to be done to get the job complete, and or be absolutely focused on the fact that you are going to finish this thing no matter what. Like, don't start a business. Don't even think about doing a business. Go and work for somebody, because you know what? You will be so much happier in your life by doing that. You know, at 24, this was the age that basically I decided that, you know what? I can do better. I can do better than this. You know, I can do better than the people who were employing me, than what they had done. And I was very cocky, you know, 24, God, what do you know? So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to start my own business and do it myself, you know, by myself. Because up until then I was working as a contractor, which is still your own business, but you have the umbrella and the framework and the infrastructure of a whole organization. I was working in medical centers. Yeah. Right. So there was a whole receptionist team. There was a whole, you know, everything, stock, everything was taken care of.
Because this is something I think would be interesting for listeners. Because what is the difference between a contractor and a entrepreneur, or like a business person, or like a freelancer and a business person? You know, a business person, isn't it someone who's got team, or someone who's actually running they're not necessarily the people who are actually doing it, they're running the business.
Look, you know, my distinction, and this is probably, I don't know if this is right or not.
Officially right,
yeah. Like, this is just my ideas in terms of all of this. You, as an individual, you are your own corporation. You know, I remember very early on in my whole kind of learning and developing, Brian Tracy had a huge influence on me, you know, his recordings and his kind of business philosophy and everything else. And one of the things that he says is exactly this point. It's that, you know, whoever you are, whether you have a job, whether you work for someone, whether you run your own little, you know, shindig, whatever it is that you do, you are your own corporation. Which basically means provide like, if you have a boss, your customer is your boss. Your job is to make your boss be like the happiest individual on earth. You know, to have a job, to be promoted, to have success in your job, in your career, it's so simple and most people miss it. You know what it is? You go to your boss and you ask your boss, what is your number one priority? How can I help you achieve it? And then you make it your life's absolute purpose and mission to achieve that individual's outcome. And let me tell you, you will be so valued that that person will never want to lose you. They will give you raises, they will give you opportunity, they will give you things that you would have never otherwise have received if you weren't the type of person that just got it done. Be the type of, like, you know, whenever I get someone in my team that has that attitude, I'm like, oh my God, what do I need to do to keep you forever? It's
same like for me, obviously for you probably need people who have certain degrees and stuff, but for me, in the creative industry, you don't actually need a degree as long as you're good. And it's like what we look for in the creative industry, or is, sure, your show reel or whatever, but like, how much do you want it?
Yeah.
How much do you have the
what
attitude?
Are you willing to do? Like, what do you know?
It's attitude is everything. It's not attitude. It's like, well, yeah, it is attitude, but it's like, how passionate are you? How much do you want the job? You don't just want it for the money. You want it because you want to work for this person or because you want to get experience.
Yeah,
whatever
absolutely.
it is.
But also, it's this whole idea of like, how do you succeed at anything? Well, you become the person who gets it done, right? Who fixes problems? Who basically, people don't have to babysit you to get the outcome. And this is what I mean. Like, if you want to please, whether it's your employer, whether it's your customer, whether it's whoever it is, right? You've got to figure out what is your number one thing that you want to get out of this. Because, as we know, you can have everything in life you want as long as you help enough other people get what they want. Nobody cares about what it is that you want. What they care about is, what are you going to do for me?
Yeah. Exactly.
To help me get what it is that I want. And then as a result of that, I might either do something for you, or other people will see it and go, oh, I want that.
It's a great mindset. We were just saying this before. I was saying I'm reaching out for partnerships for my business right now. And the problem I faced was, I'm going in, I know what I want from them, but I don't really care about that. I have to pitch what they're getting out of it. Like, what's the benefit for them?
Yeah,
and that
100%.
applies across, when you're going to work with someone, what's the benefit they're getting out of having you? As you said, a huge one is if they don't have to babysit you.
Oh my God.
They'll just,
oh my God.
If you can just trust someone.
If you can deliver an outcome, you are so valuable, because most people won't.
Yeah, and people don't realize that. Everyone thinks everyone else is really good, but most people aren't.
No. Most people, they drop the ball. You give them a job, they kind of do it half-hearted, right? And then they kind of go, oh yeah, it's too hard. Yeah, look, I don't really want to finish. I sacked someone once because we had an agreement that she was going to deliver a particular outcome for me, and I was going to pay her for that outcome. Ended up being that I had paid her $14,000. There was no outcome to be seen. And I basically pressed her. I said, listen, I've paid you already this much money and I still don't have my outcome. So when is it that I'm actually I want to see a plan as to when I'm getting my outcome. So she goes, I don't feel like doing it anymore. I'm like, okay, thank you very much. You're no longer required.
Yeah.
Literally, I lost $14,000 in the process, but it was a great lesson.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic lesson, because I realized that, if they're not going to deliver now, they're going to deliver never.
And people need to be listening to think, how can they deliver?
Oh, for sure.
I think it's just working hard and being... And, often, even if it's a job that you don't like, I think people don't realize the opportunity it can lead to.
Oh, God,
because you might get a great reference, or they might just, when you leave on happy terms, they'll be like, yeah, how can I help you get where you want to be?
Gosh,
sort of
one of my receptionists, it's really interesting that you say this. I hired her when she was 22, I think. This was some years back, probably about 7 or so years back now. And she came back to me 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and she said, Gabriella, just letting you know, my change of circumstance, I'm looking for a job. Do you have anything, or can you recommend me to someone? I'm like, and she was so amazing. Like, seriously, I had just hired someone. If I hadn't, I would have absolutely hired her. I said, Nadine, don't worry. You know what? My husband is probably needing someone for his business. Let me just have a conversation with him and I'll let you know.
And if it wasn't your husband, you probably would have found someone else. Or you would have reached out.
Because I would have recommended her.
Yeah.
I would have because she's someone who I would have absolutely recommended, because every single time I needed her, she delivered. And I have never forgotten that. Right. So she basically, when she came back to me, she's like, I'm like, oh my God, I want you. And I had just hired. So I was like, okay, I can't have you right now. But my husband, so he basically said to me, so is she good? Like, should I hire her? I said, on the spot.
Yeah.
Like, literally. So that's exactly what happened. He hired her on the spot. She's doing an amazing job for him. So, this whole thing about what is a business, you know what? Don't worry about it. Just deliver the highest possible amount of value that you absolutely can to whoever it is that you're delivering it to in that moment. Whether it's your boss, whether it's your co-worker, because you know what, believe it or not, and like it or not, they might be your employer sometime in the future. They might be your business partner. They might be, someone who actually gives you the opportunity of your lifetime. So you know what? Don't worry about who it is that you've got to deliver to. Just deliver.